We will be talking to Rehabilitation Secretary Ping Lacson about his priorities and how he intends to refocus on urgent rehabilitation work. Good afternoon, Secretary.
Good afternoon, Chai.
We're glad that you could accommodate us in your busy schedule.
Yeah, thank you very much, too.
I'd like to ask first, you met recently with President Aquino. How did that meeting go and what exactly did you discuss?
That was 2 Thursdays ago. We met. It was a cordial, honest, frank, and respectful meeting that we had. And it addressed a lot of issues. And that triggered the cabinet meeting, the special cabinet meeting on Yolanda last Friday.
Yes.
And I'm now more confident that the rehabilitation pace will accelerate.
Your critics and those who've been watching government efforts have perennially been saying that it hasn't been moving fast enough. And I guess one complicating factor was the Napoles list. How do you reconcile this?
Well, that is not quite correct, no? If we go by international standards or past experiences in other countries, Katrina, for example, it took them 4 years before they saw initial tangible results of rehabilitation. Banda Aceh, it took them 8 years. In fact, Pakuntoro had 5 months to negotiate for his powers with President Bangbang. I had only 2 nights, and we're barely, or more than 5 months in office. And yet, we've done quite a lot. It's only a matter of communicating this to the people. That is the reason why there's this misimpression that nothing is moving, or if at all, moving very slowly.
There was a recent interview with Mayor Romualdez, and he said that, and even Oxfam pointed this out, that money from the national government was not filtering down to the local government level, and this has affected their work. Do you agree?
It is slowing down. In fact, Mayor Romualdez received from DILG, Secretary Marojas, 833, I was informed, for the repairs of the City Hall, public market, and civic centers. So far, the Interior Department has already downloaded 1.2 billion pesos to the LGUs. It's actually 2 billion, no? Because 291 or 260 million was downloaded to repair police stations, jails, and fire stations. No?
When was the 2 billion downloaded?
This was around 3 weeks ago. It was downloaded. The 491 million pesos will be implemented by the DPWH because this would involve the totally damaged municipal halls. The Interior Department is only in charge of downloading resources to LGUs with partially damaged municipal halls. This has been accomplished already. DOH has downloaded half of the 1 billion pesos for the repair of rural health units. They continue to monitor the progress of the rehabilitation or reconstruction work, and they will further download the remaining 500 million for the repair of RHUs.
So you're saying that DBM is no longer a bottleneck because that was the allegation, and
it is not a bottleneck.
And specifically, I think Mayor Romualdez also said that Secretary Abad has become a problem.
No, I don't think so, because Secretary Abad during cluster group meetings, because we did a cluster framework approach. No? We formed 5 clusters, namely livelihood, infrastructure, resettlement, social services, and support. Secretary Abad co-chairs the support cluster along with NEDA Director General Balisacan. And they are in charge of addressing the cross-cutting policy issues and concerns. And that's what they're doing, because there are emerging issues in the course of our rehabilitation. Actually, there is no master rehabilitation plan yet submitted. Why? Yeah. Because according to 10121, RA 10121, this is the law that created the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Council. We will have to wait for the OCD, the Office of Civil Defense, to submit for approval by the President the post-disaster needs assessment.
It's very bureaucratic. A lot of requirements.
It's in accordance with the provision of law, so we cannot do anything about it. Having said that, we somehow went around that provision, because aside from the cluster framework approach, we did a bottom-up approach. What we did was to go down to the LGUs, encourage them to submit their own local versions of rehabilitation plans, which they did. To date, 4 have already submitted. Cebu, in this order, no? Cebu, Leyte, Western Samar, and then Tacloban. All 4 have already submitted and presented to us, along with the at least the cluster heads, their localized version of the rehabilitation plans. We have scheduled Eastern Samar next week, because next week we're going to sign off. I mean, when we say we, the cabinet clusters and this office will start signing off the rehabilitation plans as presented to us, because there are numbers that need to be reconciled. And this was the essence, or this was one of the issues that was resolved during the cabinet meeting last Friday. It was a special cabinet meeting on Yolanda, triggered by some issues that was presented to media, and which I don't regret, by the way, because I feel that one positive result or outcome that that emerged after that issue concerning 1 or 2 or 3 cabinet secretaries who were not so cooperative. No? Somehow it has sped up things. And now we're there right now. I'm confident that by June, at least middle of June, we'll be starting to implement the projects, because the projects have been identified.
That's good news.
Yes, that's very good news. We're talking of resettlement, livelihood, education sector, meaning classrooms, no, to be reconstructed, and of course the other components, which is identification of multi-hazards, because we are coordinating with DNR and DOST also to fast-track the multi-hazard mapping, because we need to identify lands that are suitable for resettlement. It's not as simple as, herding people in the high-risk areas whose houses were destroyed and resettling them to available real estate, pieces of real estate. It's not as simple as that. We'll have to consider that the lands to where they will be resettled are free from hazards. And when we talk of hazards, there are several. It's not just tsunami, storm surge. We're talking of, fault lines, volcanoes, landslides, tsunami, storm surge, soil liquefaction. It's a menu of disasters. Because if we want to build back better, we'll have to address climate change, because we have to be prepared for the future disasters. Yes. No, as I was saying, it took 4 years and 8 years in other countries to fully rehabilitate.
Allow me to backtrack a bit, because if disasters are coming and June is just around the corner and we anticipate anything, the worst that could happen. And I'd also say that maybe it's critical for you to be working very closely and be in good terms with members of the cabinet.
Oh, yeah.
Has the recent controversy affected your working relationship with them?
Not at all.
Especially those that you mentioned as being part of the list?
They should be part of a comprehensive effort. Because if 1 or 2 cabinet secretaries are uncooperative or, deliberately slow, it will affect the whole plan.
Yes.
Because, say, this is just an example. I'm not pointing to any particular cabinet secretary. Right. If the resettlement cluster is ready to resettle, assuming that there's available land for all the housing units to be resettled, and there's enough jobs available or livelihood available in the new resettlement sites, and there's enough classrooms to be built in the new resettlement site. But say if DNR and DOST are not ready to identify the suitable lands for settlement, where would we go? We cannot resettle, because if we resettle them to areas that are not suitable or that are not free from hazards, then we're putting the people in harm's way. I mean, the survivors. So, and government will not allow that. The president's call is very clear: build back better. And Yolanda is the new normal, and we'll have to be prepared for another Yolanda, if not a stronger Yolanda.
Mayor Romualdez mentioned something about the quality of the land. That it's difficult to find areas where to move them, and he said that there has to be a clearer definition of temporary shelter, because now they've been there for what? They'll be probably living there for years, and yet it's still called temporary.
We are addressing that problem. I have coordinated with DSWD Secretary Dingo Soliman. This was 3 weeks ago. And we decided, as a matter of policy, to dismantle the tents, start dismantling the tents, and start building, at least in the meantime that we're looking for suitable lands as resettlement areas, to start building transitional shelters or even core shelters.
This is different from bunkhouses?
No, bunkhouses is a thing of the past.
Okay.
I made this very clear with Secretary Babe Singson. No more bunkhouses. We agreed on that. Because bunkhouses, you know, the culture of Filipinos, especially in the rural areas, in the remote towns of central Philippines, you know, they're not used to condo type buildings, you know, sharing the same building, separated by walls. And in the case of bunkhouses, they're separated by very thin walls, 1/4 inch thick plywood, not even plyboard. And we're not used to that. So it will invite social problems later on. International standards, you know, those knowledgeable in the rehabilitation of in foreign countries, dealing with foreign disasters in foreign countries, they told us that tents are only good for 2 months. And bunkhouses or barracks or temporary shelters, they're only good for 2 years. Beyond that, there will be a lot of social problems. You know, children quarreling with each other, and then the parents will get involved, and then the wife taking a bath in a common bathroom, and somebody will be suspected of, you know, doing some naughty things, and then the husbands will get involved. This all sorts of problems, you know, past experiences in other countries would tell us not to build bunkhouses or not to allow people to stay in barracks or bunkhouses more than 2 years.
So what do you do with those who are currently occupying bunkhouses? They stay there until...
Well, they stay there until the transitional shelters, assuming that the permanent shelters will not be ready by then. We need, the National Housing Authority has identified 214,000, more than 214,000 housing units to be built. And we're only talking of people, of survivors, who used to stay in the high-risk zones. You know. We're no longer talking of no-build zones. That's downright impractical. So we have reclassified.
So you're doing away with the no-build zone
We're doing away
policy.
with no-build zone. The first person to protest against the no-build zone policy is the Secretary of Tourism. He told the cabinet, I cannot imagine a beach resort being put up more than 40 meters away from the beach or the coastline. And that makes a lot of sense, because if you declare an area a no-build zone, then when it says no-build zone, then it's not just no-dwelling zone, but no-build zone, because that's the policy. So we're doing away with that. We're classifying areas into high-risk zones, controlled zones, and safe zones. Controlled meaning we can do some mitigation measures like mangroves, beach forests, seawalls, or even houses in stilts, those sorts of things.
But the success of that will depend on the capability of the local government unit.
Yes, because the local government units will be the ones to issue ordinances declaring, or they will issue the land use plans in their respective localities. So it will entail close coordination with the local government executives.
And the police.
We're doing that. And the police, because they're the ones enforcing. But we're doing that. That's the reason why, you know, we decided to incentivize the local government executives who are proactive enough more than the others to prepare their own rehabilitation plans. It's just a matter of reconciling the numbers.
Yes,
Because
that was a point that was raised, that
Yeah.
various government agencies have different numbers and they don't match with the numbers at the local level.
understandably so, because these are all moving targets. From the point of view of local government units, projects keep on coming. Construction of classrooms, housing units, they're undergoing or they're taking place in so many areas. So every day we have to keep pace with all these developments. For example, we have registered in my office at OPAR, we have registered a total of 1,407 projects. And of those registered projects, when I say project or projects, 1,407 projects, when we talk of one project, it could mean 5 or 7 or 10 school buildings. It could mean 50 housing units. It's just as if one project would only be equivalent to one housing unit. No. So if we have registered 1,407 projects, that's a lot. No? And right now, those are the commitments. No? Ongoing projects, if I remember my numbers, 500 plus. I think 513 or 517. Or 273, I'm sorry. 273 projects are already ongoing. This is from the public and the private sector. So things are moving. We're being drowned by the propaganda line of People Search, of the militants, of those that, I'd be more blunt, of groups that would herd people from some parts of Samar, not hit by Yolanda, bringing in people who are not in the first place survivors. We've proven this. We've validated this. We received the intelligence reports from the intelligence community in the area, and we have validated.
How do you control this movement or this migration?
Well, tell them in their faces that what they're doing is not proper, because they are using people who are not survivors and who were not hit by Typhoon Yolanda in the first place. They're bringing them to Tacloban City to demonstrate, to stage rallies, demonstrations against the government. And what they're doing is they are demanding some very popular issues, like just give 40,000 per family and let them build on their own. That's very popular. And they know that government will not give in to those kinds of demands. Why? Because it's impractical. Because if we want to build back better, we will not do that, because we will have to resettle them in an organized manner, in a more methodological, systematic manner, and based on science. Another demand is to allow them to build in the no-build zones, or anywhere near the coastlines. What if they're hit by another storm surge of 5 meters, 5 meter high storm surge? Then what will government be answerable for? Government will be responsible for deaths of people after Yolanda, and government is not ready to accept responsibility for that.
So by when exactly can we see qualitative changes? Because when we last visited Tacloban, it still looked like a war zone. Yes.
Very soon, as I said, since Tacloban City has already presented to us their Tacloban City Master Rehabilitation Plan, it won't take a long time before implementation happens. And we're looking at middle of June, because we're doing this simultaneously. Even in the absence of an approved PDNA, we were already doing that. That's why when PDNA was finally presented last Friday, Tacloban, Leyte, Western Samar, and Cebu have already presented their rehabilitation plans, ready to be vetted. And once we reconcile all the numbers, because we're getting from different sources, from the cluster groups, because once they submit their action plans and programs, there are numbers there. We're getting our numbers from the local government units. We're getting our numbers from the PDNA. we're getting our numbers from the data collated by my office.
Pero what nga if there are different numbers?
We can easily reconcile because we can easily explain why such differences in the figures occur.
Are you happy with the PDNA?
I'm not ready yet because to do just the PDNA because it was presented and we have not really examined in detail the figures. No, my staff is doing that right now.
Another issue that has been raised, one concern is that it's of course politics.
Yeah.
And one explanation for the discrepancy in numbers is, according to some sectors, is that it's really not politics. More than politics, it's incompetence.
No, that's
Do you
not.
agree?
That is not fair. That is not fair. It's not incompetence. It's normal that numbers will vary, that there will be discrepancies. You know. If we reconcile or if numbers are very similar, then we should start suspecting that they're just, you know, conniving with each other or conspiring with each other just to make numbers sync or be in sync with each other. And I'll start to be suspicious. But if there are differences in numbers that can easily be justified or explained, then to me, that's really the normal thing to happen.
And speaking of politics, I just have to ask this.
Well, if somebody is saying, or if a local politician, I'll be direct to the point. If Mayor Romualdez is telling you that there's incompetence in the national government agencies, well, I think that's an unfair indictment of the national government agencies.
So you're happy with the...
Especially after Friday, I'm very happy.
So Friday was really crucial
That's
for
the
you.
clincher, you know. After Friday's cabinet
was a turning
meeting,
point.
yes, I think so. In fact, the following day, I thank the president for calling the special cabinet meeting because he started, you know, he decided to take matters in his own hands because he directed specific department heads to do it now and do it fast, you know.
I'm curious though, that your disclosure of the lists, of the names on the list, had a direct effect on the president because some of them, like Butch Abad and other names that you disclose, are close to him.
You know, Chai, it's very difficult to lie on national TV. It's very difficult, you know, and I won't do that. If I'm asked a question, either I don't answer it or answer correctly and truthfully. Don't ask me those questions anymore, you know, because our topic now is Yolanda.
No, but it's related. I was just curious about how it was getting in the way of work or how it helped push things.
No, it has not gotten in the way. If there was distraction, it was very temporary, you know, because, alam mo, Chay, I will have to explain to you. You know, pork barrel is very close to my heart. Not close in the sense that I advocate.
Because you don't have
Yeah, I don't have it. And I fought against it
Right.
for the longest time. You know, I delivered a scathing privilege speech in 2003. Nobody listened. And I was all against it because I knew the shenanigans, no, involved in the implementation. I knew how hypocritical it is. You know. I know how much of government or taxpayers' money is wasted in the pork barrel system. That's why, you know, and that's the reason why Mrs. Napoles decided to bring to me the documents that she had at the time. Because according to her, she could not trust anyone. And she wanted it out because she was about to undergo surgery. That's the reason. And I kept it, you know. And I wasn't telling it even to my wife. I never divulged that I had those documents. Because I had an agreement with them. You know. Of course, she could not get out of the hospital. So I was talking to them right here in my office. And I told them, you better go back to your wife. If she promises or she's committed to tell all, it must be a tell-all story. Not this one, because this is not tell-all. This looks like a counter affidavit of a defendant. You know, while she was divulging details of several transactions, this is not what I can determine as a tell-all story. and this should be backed by documents. And so in the meantime that I was keeping it and waiting for them for what I told them, to go back and discuss this among yourselves, among family members, then come back to me if you're ready, really, or decided to tell all. Because at the time, I told them I cannot even show this to President Aquino or to Ombudsman Morales. Because if you're aiming for immunity or you're aiming to be a state witness, then you must really tell all. And then when I present this to the Ombudsman, who in the first place has the authority to decide whether or not she's qualified to be granted immunity. And I told them very clearly, I cannot promise you anything. I'll just bring this to her. But at my level, I don't see the point of bringing this to the Ombudsman or even to President Aquino. That's why I kept it to myself until member of media informed me early morning or that same night when Secretary de Lima met with Mrs. Napoles. I was informed by media. There was a meeting between Mrs. Napoles and Justice Secretary de Lima. And Mrs.
lasted
Napoles,
for 5 hours.
Yes, and Mrs. Napoles informed the Secretary of Justice that she gave you a copy and she wanted me to confirm it. And I wouldn't lie. So I told her, yes, I have a copy. In fact, I've already forgotten about my copy. But since you asked me, yes, I have a copy, I look for it because I have forgotten where I kept it. And then that started the whole, what you said, distraction.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was a month earlier.
That you had a copy.
Yeah, than the meeting. I wasn't talking about it. But when, it came out and I was asked, I would have to respond. Because I'd be lying to you, to your colleagues, if I would keep on denying. And then later on, they'll find out that I had a copy.
Did the President raise this at all during your meeting?
No, it wasn't
During your
taken up.
conversation with him?
The personal conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, of course, he just mentioned in passing about the list. In fact, there was, when was this? After the meeting, and I think before or after the cabinet meeting, I'm not sure anymore. He just texted me, may I ask, why are you still being quoted on Napoles? And I told him, I was being invited, and the invitation came much ahead of this issue. And the understanding was a discussion or a forum on Yolanda. And when I sat down to be interviewed, all they asked was Napoles. In fact, when I don't know if I think there's a Rappler representative in that kapihan at the Diamond Hotel, and I was the one who pleaded to them, can we discuss Yolanda? Because I noticed that all the questions centered on Napoles. And then when I told them, can you ask me questions on Yolanda? Because that's what I was invited here for. And then when they started asking questions on Yolanda, I noticed the TV cameras, the red lights were off, and the members of the crew were sleeping.
They wouldn't record while you were talking about Yolanda.
And then when I arrived in the office, my staff, met me and told me, sir, we were watching you. You were on live TV until you requested to discuss Yolanda. So that's the story. I got drawn into this, not on purpose, not really on my own liking or on my own doing. It was natural, but as I said, I wouldn't shy away from this topic because
it's something you feel passionately about.
Yes.
Okay, so it appears that after that cabinet meeting and the meeting with the president, you're now refocused and moving full steam ahead on
I've not lost focus, no. Okay. I just got distracted a bit,
Okay, maybe just the last question. What would be your top priorities in the next, because by November we would hit 1 year. It would be the anniversary of Yolanda.
All four sectors, because they always come together. They should go together. No? resettlement. When we resettle the survivors in a 250 kph wind resistant housing units, no, and intensity 9 resistant or earthquake resistant, they should be, the other components must be there: livelihood, education, health, so that should be put together in one piece. That's the reason why people should understand us, why we cannot do it in 1 month, we cannot do it in 2 months. And it's also the reason why Banda Aceh took 8 years to fully rehabilitate. Took Katrina in New Orleans 8 years to fully rehabilitate. Haiti, 4 years after, has yet to see the road to recovery. I was told that 200,000 people are still living in tents 4 years after the Haiti earthquake. So, are we slow? If we compare us with the other disaster-stricken areas, my question is, are we slow?
But the Oxfam representative...
The Oxfam representative was here yesterday. They were explaining to us the implication of their statement to media.
So, is he taking it back? Or because
no,
what he
not
said,
taking it back, but just clarifying.
Yeah, because what he said essentially was that given the amount of, the number of NGOs who have the ability to participate and the levels of aid money that have come in, the rehabilitation should have been faster compared to other areas.
That was not what they told us yesterday. They told us that it was, I think, a supposition, that if government does this, then this will happen. If government fails to do this, then this could happen.
Okay. Let's see. But that was also on record. The interview was recorded.
Yeah, it was more of a hypothesis than, factual statement of events, of developments. Okay. That's what they told us.
All right. Thank you very much, Secretary Lacson. There's a lot of things going on, and we will be watching very closely.
Yeah,
and if you say that things will become more evident and visible by June, we will check again in June.
Please do so.
You've been listening to us, to this conversation with Secretary Lacson. Thank you very much for joining us.